Hello, our SamuRais, and welcome to lesson 7 of our SamuRai lab. I'm Dr. Cuesta, and I'll be taking you again through some functions in a road to becoming an R SamuRai. This lesson will be looking at several things, and I'm looking by the sides because I'm looking at what we'll be going through today. We'll be looking at tibbles, we'll be looking at changing things from a tibble to a data frame, looking at binding rows, and then finally looking at different types of join um, so that you can combine different sets of data frames based on keys, etc. So that's what we're going to be going through today. I expect that today's lessons might be taking us around, I guess, hopefully 45 minutes, hopefully no longer than that. I did have to prepare some of the material, so let's look at some of the things that I did. So hopefully you can recreate this. Like always, I try to keep the data sets that we create very, very simple so that you can just recreate that and do it on your own. So how does that look like for the Excel? I basically create an Excel file with two sheets, sheet 1 and sheet 2. Sheet 1 contains the same data as before. You can pause the video if you want and recreate this. Sheet 2 contains this data over here. We'll be importing this data into R, and then we'll be working with it in very interesting ways. Now I'm just going to close this. Remember, at some point after this live session, you can of course pause the video and then recreate this. So let's get to it. We're going to be opening our script, right? myscript.r, the one that we've been working on since the very first lesson. And we're going to be loading the libraries. Remember, to load a library, you can just place yourself at the end of the line and press Ctrl Enter, or you can also just click here and run, and it'll run the line you're in. And we're going to be loading this Excel file. We did loading of a CSV. Now we're going to load an Excel. So let's go all the way to the end. Actually, let me yeah, let's go all the way to the end. Here we're gonna say loading Excel data sets. And make it a section, and then we're gonna click here, import data set. This one we're gonna check that the types are what we want: character, double, character, character, double. That seems to be fine. We're gonna be naming this yeah, let's do it like that. I think it's fine, but like always, let's check this. Let's change this one to, and then double again. Yeah, just to have it like this. Hopefully we don't have to do anything. And you see that we need another library here. Instead of read R, we need read Excel. So we're gonna copy this whole thing over here. And this one we're gonna be moving all the way to the top. It's always good practice to have it at the top, unless you want to keep it down there. I don't really mind, but you know, having everything ordered at the top is probably easier instead of like jumping around code to see what kind of libraries you loaded. So with that said, yeah, let's go here. We're not gonna call it book 2. We're gonna call it, we keep naming data 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's call it data 6. And actually I forgot something here, something important. So when we were importing, I should have, because we have different sheets now, right? So we have a section here called sheet. I should have done this. So I'm just gonna redo that, okay? Eric. Yeah. I could have just written sheet in there, but I wanted to show you how you can do it from the dialog. Okay, now it seems we have everything in place. Let's proceed to load this. Actually, we haven't loaded the read Excel. So now we have we have it loaded. Let's proceed. So we have data 6. Now we have our data here, and then we're going to do the same thing with data 7. And actually, I'm not going to do it from here. I'm going to do it from over here. Import dataset, sheet 2. Just change this quickly so that we have it properly, like we need. Sheet 2, etc. And here, yeah, well, we cannot really change it there. I'm gonna copy this. Data 7, let's call it. Data 7. Okay, let's proceed to load this. We have now our two data sets, data 6 and data 7. Our two data frames are here. Now, before we go any further, I think I talked before about this function called str that will tell you what type of the type of your data. It'll give information on your data frame. So let's see what we have. Str data 6. It says it's already a tibble, so it's not a data frame. Why? Because we're using functions that when importing make it a tibble by default. Now there's subtle things between, or differences between what a tibble is and a data frame is. Most of the time I think you can forget which one you're using. It's very rare that you really need to pay attention to it, at least in my experience. But it could also be that it isn't, right? Sometimes you do really need to be careful with the type, but in this case, I don't think we're gonna have troubles with that. If you're wondering what the difference between a data frame and a tibble is, when we look at tibble, because we can also create tibbles, here, I think it's this one. No, it's not this one. It's build a data frame. I think it's this one. Yeah, here it is. Tibble, it says constructs a data frame. It is used like base data frame, but with a couple notable differences. This allows called tibbles to exhibit some special behavior, such as enhanced printing. You can read what that is. Then tibbles are fully described in table df. And tibble, it says here, is a much lazier than base data frame, which is a base type. In terms of transforming the user input, it can take character vectors are not coerced to factor. That means that, well, we'll go into what that means. Factors are important sometimes when you want to display information in a certain way, or certain packages require information to be as a factor, right? Think of as a factor as something that groups things by their name, if they're characters, for example. List columns are explicitly anticipated and do not require special tricks, right? Column names are not modified, and inner names in the columns are left unchanged. So these are just some of the differences of a tibble, right, which is the structure that we're currently using. You can read more on that probably online. You don't have to really worry about it at this point. So let's just keep going, okay? Now, with that said, we loaded this information as tables, right? But we can also transform those into data frames. If for some reason we want to do that, it's actually quite simple. What we need to do is just do, actually, let's create a test variable that we can later delete. So we're going to say test is, and then assignment operator. We're going to be looking at as.data.frame. Then we're going to provide our data frame, which is data 6. And then that's it. Now, if we check data 6, well, not data 6, but test with str, we'll see that it's now a data frame, right? So that's it. And we can also make test in case we wanted it to go back to it being a tibble, right? For some reason, we can do again test as, I think it's as tibble. yeah, as tibble, and then we're gonna do test, and then str test, and now it's a tibble again. So that's how you can change between as a data frame or a tibble quite easily, right? There's nothing more to it. Like I said, tibbles have special properties and are a little bit lazier than regular data frames. Most of the time, like I said, you won't really even notice if you're working with one or the other. If you're working with a tidyverse, most of the time it'll just be a tibble without even you knowing it, right? So like I said, it's not really that, you shouldn't really care that much about it, at least not at this point. Maybe somewhere down the line, if you're developing some kind of full-blown app and it does require a data frame, then you can always just change from tibble to data frame. That's the only scenario I can think of. Okay, now test. We don't really need test anymore, and it's just taking up space. So remember, if you want to delete something from the environment, you can just do rm test, and let's say here add a note, this will delete test from the environment, and then control enter to execute that line, and it just goes away. Now we created tibbles by loading the data from the Excel files. What if we would just want to create a tibble by ourselves? Create something that is not in a file that we're importing. How can we do that? It's actually quite simple. And actually, I'm gonna bring back test, or no, let's call it data8 to not. I don't want to use test again. Let's say data8, and then we're gonna use the function called tibble from the deepler package. And here we're gonna be giving the variables for our tibble or data frame. Let's say x equal to 1 to 10, and then y is equal to letters. So this is a special type, and we can use it to specify which letters, right? So letters contains all the letters in the alphabet. If I say 1 to 10, it'll just display letters 1 to, I mean A to the 10th letter, right? So how does that look like? Let's see, data 8, it says 10 observations, 2 variables, that is 10 rows, 2 columns, and that basically contains x, which is the one we said. Actually, let's not call it x, let's call it numbers, and then let's call this letters. And then we can see that, there we go. We have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So quite simple. And we check the type of this, data 8, we will see that it is a tibble, right? And we can transform again this tibble to a data frame by using as.data.frame, or we can transform it back to tibble using as.tibble if it was a data frame. Now, sometimes at some point, if you're working with the tidyverse, etc., you might want to create an empty, for some reason you might want to empty your data frame and just have it contain the column or the variable names but no information in it. And you might be wondering, okay, how can I do that, right? Well, in case you want to do that, let's call it here emptying data frame. And to empty the data frame, you just need to do data 8, because we want to empty this one. And then we're going to do data 8. And this is a new type of way of working with data that is very base R, right? So you might be wondering, okay, this is the first time I've seen this. And I'll tell you very quickly how you can access certain elements of a data frame with base R. So we're going to use square brackets, and then we're going to type here, and bear with me a little bit, I'll explain what this means, false. And if we do this, we will have that it has, well, actually it has 0 variables. I should have done it the other way around. My bad. So it should have been like this. Like this. So let me recreate data 8. Data 8, we have it again. And there we go. We have our variables, numbers and letters with 0 observations. If you do it the other way around, you'll see that it'll just create nothing, right? It was just nothing in there. Now, this is a way in which you can access elements inside, right, of a data set. And actually, I'll just make a quick parenthesis on that. In base R, you can access information from a data frame by using square brackets. You can select columns like this, etc. And you can also take out elements inside this by using, I believe, double square brackets. So how does that look like? So let's do that. Let's reload here data 8. And then if we do data 8, 1, comma, nothing, it's just gonna show us the first row. So if we say here, let's say 2, actually it's not, see, 1, probably not gonna, yep, if we say 2, it's gonna go for row 2. If we do 1 to 10, should probably show us 1 to 10 of the rows, and all the, basically the first part here is going for the observations or the rows, and then after the comma we're looking at the column. So if I say like this, we're just gonna see the column numbers. If I go for 2, it's just gonna show us the letters, right? If I wanted to extract a particular element of that data 8, I could do like this, 1, comma 1, and then we can see that it's just a single element. So if I were to say this, for example, into X, you would see that it's a value that contains only one element, right? Instead of being, it becomes basically a unidimensional vector, right? That doesn't contain anything else. If I say here, for example, 2, 1, that would be 2, but that is kind of boring. So let's do here 2, 2, that would be B. So remember, this is a way in which you can access information, right, in your data. And you can also do, for example, data 8 money sign, and then it'll just give you, for example, what is contained inside of it as a vector, right? Or if we do the same for data money sign, data 8, sorry, data 8 letters, it'll do this the same. So if we were to save this into X, for example, we were to save it here, you see how it changed, and it's basically the same. So there's different ways of accessing information. You basically choose how you want to do that, or how you want to extract that information for a data frame if you need it. With that small parenthesis said, and I hope, I mean, I never really talked about this, but this is gonna be useful, especially this type of notation down the road. Please do remember it once we start looking more into Flex dashboards and Shiny applications and all this kind of stuff. It's handy to remember this. With that said, I don't need X again, so I'm just gonna remove it, and then we'll go back to emptying, for example, our data frame. Right, so now we have data 8 with the 2 variables, and then absolutely nothing. So this, remember, this is something very useful if you want to, let's say that you have some kind of for loop and you want to store this information in this, not in a list, but in a data frame. You would be able to do so like this. You create that data frame first, you already have the variables, and then you start adding things to this data frame in a loop. This is the best way to do it. I don't know, it's a way of doing it. Programming, you have multiple ways of achieving the same result. Now we have talked about how to create a tibble, data frames, how to empty a tibble. Let's look now into binding some rows. Now for that, we're gonna execute some of our code from before because I want us to have some of that data. It doesn't matter. Okay. Now let's see what happens. Let's see. We have okay. Let's do a very simple example. Let's here we're gonna say bind rows. First of all, what is bind rows? Bind rows, and you have another called bind columns too. Bind rows. It says bind any number of data frames by row, making a longer result. That means it will contain more observations. This is similar to do call rbind data frames, but the output will contain all columns that appear in any of the inputs. That means that even if you don't have the input in one of those data frames, those will be added. So let's do a simple example where we just bind the same thing twice, right? So let's say here, let's call this bind rows. And then we're gonna do, let's call it data. Wow, we're creating so many data names, huh? It's getting out of control. Bind rows, and then we're gonna do data 1, and now we're gonna do data 1 again. So data 9 will have twice, of course, the observations of data 1, and then it should basically be a repeat. Yep. There we go. Exactly the same thing. And I could just keep saying another data 1 here, for example. And then it will just be keep going and going and going. So that's basically what bind row does. It allows you to combine two data frames and make them longer. So you can stack them on top of each other. Quite useful if you ask me. Now, what happens if you, like I said, if you have more variables or you're missing some variables in one of those data frames that you're binding? Let's look at that. So here we're gonna be doing again, let's comment this one out. Let's do data 9 again with bind rows, data 1, and then we're gonna do data 2. How does data 2 look like? So that we see. Data 1 we have value, number, letters, type. Data 2 we have number, letters, type, value, word, speed, total, initials. So much more. So let's see how that looks like. Oh, actually it should have been like this. Just okay, whatever here. Data 9, and then we have that the columns that didn't exist in data 1 were also added. So now we have type. Well, first of all, there was a slight difference here because type here is with a capital letter, and in data 2 we have it with low cap. So it now it contains both of them, type and type, which is kind of like the same information, but it lets you really look that whatever didn't exist in either data frame or tibble was still added, and inside of it you'll just find NA. Right, that's it. So that's kind of how bind rows works. Now you can also use, I think, bind columns. I haven't really used bind columns, but if you needed to just combine two things, I guess just put them next to each other. That's how you would do it, I guess. Other ways in which you can join data frames is by using different types of joins. We have, and let me show you a screen, actually, a picture of that, of the different types of joins. I'll bring it up. Let's make this tiny here, and then let's bring it up. Okay, here we go. So we have a full join, inner join, left join, and right join. full join, when you have the two tables or the two data frames or the two data sets, it'll basically match both of it. It'll just combine the whole thing, X and Y. It'll just make a single whole entity from both of them. When you have inner join, only things that match between X and Y will remain. When you have a left join, only things in Y that match X will remain. And when you have a right join, only things in X that match Y will remain. It's that simple. And how do we execute a left join and a right join? Well, we already prepared some of the data sets that we will be joining. I did that at the very start of this lesson when I joined, when I loaded this data over here, data 6 and data 7. So let's look at data 6 and data 7. Data 6, data 7. So both of them have 10 observations. And then I gave data 7 two columns, right, number and type, and added a new one called speed, low, medium, and high. So we're going to be joining these two. We're going to be doing left join between data 6 and data 7. So and we're going to be creating this new data called 10. So let's do here join. Let's make it into a section 2. Call it data 10, and then we're gonna do left join. It says X and Y. My X is gonna be data 6. My other one is gonna be data 7, and then we need to provide it by number and type. Let's just make sure that we have the number and type is low cap. And then let's look at data 10. And there we have it. We have basically performed what many people would think of in Excel as a VLOOKUP, right? Where we say like, hey, match these two things, look in these two tables, and then match the records. Now, let's just check that. We have number 1 type X, number 1 type X, and that should be a low. Number 1 type X, and that should be a low. Right, so that's how you can use a join. It's quite simple. You just need to provide the data frames, and then you need to make sure that they have something in common between those. Let's call it a key between data frame A and data frame B, or data frame X and data frame Y, so that you can just join that information together. Now, what would happen if you join the same thing? Let's do something. Well, first of all, what happens if we do it like type like this? It's gonna tell us that it says join columns in X must be present in the data. Yeah, because we don't have type, right? So make sure that you always type the names of your variables like they are. If you make some, and this is a very common mistake for beginners, that they think they're typing the name of the variable correctly, but they're not. They might be missing a space or an underscore or a hyphen, and then they keep scratching their head. What is happening here? Why does it say that it can't? And it's all just something as easy as them slightly typing things differently and not being able to interpret the operation, right? So what if we do data 10 left, and I'm not going to be going through the rest of the joins. They're pretty self-explanatory, right? The thing to remember is let me Let me open that. Give me a second. Yeah. Yeah, the thing to remember is this, right? As long as you can remember this figures here, you'll be fine. There's no rocket science to it. You just need to do it like this. Left join your data by what you're joining it, and then that's it. Now, let's say that we want to join the same thing again. What would happen if we do? And I don't think I've ever tried it, but we'll see. Actually, let's do 7 because 7 is shorter. Number and type data 7. Let's just look at data 7. Yep, pretty short. What's going to happen? Actually, let's also call it 10. Let's just disable this one over here. Data 10. There we go. Now, and this is very interesting. If you're joining data and you have the same, you have your key number and type, and the remaining column that is gonna be joined contains a name that also exists in the other data frame, what the function will do, what the left join will do, is that it'll change the names. It'll add .x and .y to it. So in case you're joining two data frames that contain, well, you have the keys that you're joining that of course are the same, but if any of the other columns for some reason is also containing the same name, and that is not one of the join criteria, right, one of the keys to match these two data sets together, what will happen is that you will get exactly this. You'll get the name of that variable or that column with .x and .y. So that you know that, hey, this came from X, right, from our X data frame, and this one came from Y. So that way you're able to distinguish, like, okay, where is this information coming from? Of course, if it's the same information or whatever, you can always choose to rename this, right? We know that there's a function called rename. If you forgot how that is, well, you can always, let's pipe this. And then I always forget if it's the new one or the old one first. Let's say type dot. I think it's new one. Let's call it type equal type dot x. And the other one I'm not gonna rename. Type x doesn't exist. Let's see if maybe I'm not even to pipe it. Yeah, let's do this instead. Data 10 pipe rename. It doesn't exist. Let's see. Oh, it's actually called speed. Sorry. So that's my bad. So let's try it again. Sorry for that, guys. Sometimes I'm not paying enough attention. Don't be like me. So let's try it again. I was just typing the wrong name. I should have listened to my own advice. See, everyone always makes this mistake that can rename columns that don't exist. Now, why did I make this mistake? Well, I thought that maybe because we're doing the left join here, maybe something was not being passed properly. But that was me. Probably it's gonna work now. So we do speed equal speed.x. There we go. And then it should be relabeled. So yeah, that's how you can use rename. Now, if you remember, we talked about how to manipulate strings, how to make things match. So for example, let's say that, just as an example, that we had here type X, but type X was a low cap. right? And in this case, it wasn't. It was already a cap. So it was very easy to join 6 and 7. But if this information here, let's say, was low cap x, then followed with an underscore, then you wouldn't be so easily able to join these two data frames, and then you would need to transform your data a little bit, and that's usually what happens in real life. Rarely do you get to just join tables very easily, of course, unless you were the person designing the system and you are aware of all this and you want to really simplify how you work with your data. But that case doesn't really exist in most parts. Most of the time, you'll just be taking data from very different sources of very different systems, and their interpretation of the variables and what's contained within those variables is different. System A might have cap X, while system B has low cap X with an underscore at the end just because, and then this makes things such as combining these data frames a little bit more complicated. And for that, we did a lesson back, I think 1 or 2 lessons back, when we were looking at string manipulation, how we could fix that. So hopefully now you're seeing a bigger picture, right? How we can take some of the things that we've learned of how to manipulate strings to fix our data between two different data frames, to finally join those two and obtain a final result such as data 10. Now, I'm going to be commenting this one out, and I'm going to be just keeping this one, data 10, because that's better looking, right? I like it a little bit more. And that would be basically taking us to the conclusion of our lesson today. I think maybe we should do, should we do a little bit of cleanup? No, I think it's fine. Yeah, let's keep all this stuff here. It's getting a little bit crowded. Maybe at some point later on, we might just do a cleanup where we write all these variables down and just, all this data down to just clear our environment. But as of now, let's keep it like that. So in case you haven't saved your script, please remember to save it. Right, and that's basically everything for today's lesson. Just to do a quick recap, instead of loading a CSV, now we loaded an Excel that had 2 different sheets, right? So if you ever wonder how to do that, that's how you do it. You use the library read Excel, then you do files and you can import it from there, copy the code that is generating, paste it on your script, and then you have everything here, and give it a name, of course. We also went through data frames and tables and what are some of their differences. Of course, you can read much more on that online or on the book that I recommended the other time, R for Data Science. I taught you how you can access data inside the data frames, right, directly, or how you can access or select part of it in base R. We went into how to empty a data frame, how to create also a tibble, how to bind rows of data of different data frames, what that looks like, and finally we did a left join. I will not go through all the other joins. Like I said, it's pretty much the same as long as you have this picture over here as to which ones and how is it that it works. And that was basically it. I do hope that you enjoyed today's class. Like I said, little by little we're building our knowledge. We're building our Lego blocks that will help us to be much more efficient when we do things. Next lesson is an interesting one. We'll be looking at dates and times and how to manipulate this. Working with dates and times can be a little bit annoying, to be honest. It's one of the things I like working with the least, but it's absolutely necessary that you know how to do it. And we're going to be looking at how you can extract elements from a date, how you can make sure that you're importing that date correctly, common mistakes that people do when working with dates, etc. All of that we'll be looking at lesson 8. I hope you enjoyed lesson 7. I hope that if you like my work, you can give me a like or a subscribe or tell your friends about this, get the word out, make more people watch my videos. That would always be appreciated. And with that said, class dismissed. SamuRais, I hope to see you in lesson 8 and have a great day.